Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I don't bite. If you wish, you can come closer. My name is Milojka Magajne, and I have been working as a curator in the Idrija Municipal Museum for about 20 years now. I'm also the head of the Cerkno Museum Department, and an important part of my work is dedicated to the Franja Partisan Hospital, which has been a part of my life since I was a kid, because I've grown up in the village where the Franja is located. And it's also a part of my life personally, because some members of my family were involved during the war when the hospital was operating. This is my home region, beautiful, as you can see. Cerkno is in the, Cerkno is in the bottom, and the highest mountain, Porezen. I hope you will come and visit us on Wednesday afternoon. The mission of Idrija Municipal Museum is dedicated to permanent care of the movable heritage in Idrija and Cerkno regions, to present and research the rich technical heritage of the famous Idrija mercury mine, inscribed on UNESCO World Heritage List, and to manage the numerous monuments, among which Franja Partisan Hospital stands out. In our museum, visitors enjoy exhibitions about the history of the mine and heritage of mercury, its role and significance for the world history, and especially in learning about the arts of making Idrija bobbin lace. And now, Franja. The Franja Partisan Hospital is a monument from the World War II. It was operating between December 1943 and May 1945. For almost the whole period, the main physician and the manager of the hospital was Franja Boyce, very brave and strong woman, and as you can see, a beautiful one also. The hospital was named after her already during the war. The monument, so Franja Partisan Hospital, is the monument of national importance. It is on the UNESCO tentative list and received last year European Heritage Label. I will talk about this much later. Like other European nations, Slovenes rose against fascism and Nazism during the Second World War. They organized their own guerrilla army, which successfully fought against the enemy. Partisan hospitals were part of that army and represented a unique system of professional medical care in extremely hard conditions. Franja Partisan Hospital was one of them. As far as we know, other liberation movements in Europe didn't organize such medical services. It was one of more than 120 partisan hospitals which were organized in Slovenia during the war. Here on the map you can see only the large ones. Because of the safety reasons, they were constructed in forests and barely accessible ravines, so in places which were difficult to access. Why this was necessary? Because the Nazi army didn't respect Geneva Convention about how to treat wounded. If they had discovered the hospital, they killed them all. The Founder of the hospital was Dr. Viktor Volchak. He selected the location for the hospital in the Pasice Gorge, as you can see, the gorge you can see on the picture. The gorge is located in the village Doleni Novaki near Cerkno. So Dr. Volchak followed the advice of the local farmer, Janez Peternel. Peternel offered shelter to the first wounded on his farm, but since this was dangerous for him and his family, he proposed to Dr. Volchak the place for the hospital, which was very close to his home. Soon after that, Doctor and his companions started to build the hospital. But at first, they had to carry the necessary wood to the place. First barrack was built in the middle of December 1943, and on 23 December received first 7 wounded. And Dr. Volchak was also the first physician in the hospital. All partisan hospitals took strict safety precautions. They were not allowed to talk or sing loud or to burn fire at daytime. Voices or smoke could reveal their location to the enemy. Regarding Franja partisan hospital, the main safety precaution was that they used the stream, so the river which flows to the gorge, as a main path to the hospital. Patients were transported to the hospital at night, and they were blindfolded during the transport, so only the staff knew the exact location. This was because of the safety reasons. Besides that, they organized a strong defense system with bunkers for the guards and shelters for the wounded, and even a minefield. Such defense system was unique among partisan hospitals. The hospital was never discovered by the enemy, although German soldiers came close, very close 2 times. First attack, if you can say so, happened in April 1944. A group of German soldiers had come by and stopped at the top of the gorge. By chance, they discovered one of the buildings in the bottom of the gorge and started to shoot. Nobody in the hospital was injured, but they thought that somebody had betrayed them. They decided to evacuate the hospital, and that evacuation was realized at night. All wounded were transported to dislocated units in the Gorenska region. Later, when they realized that there was no betrayal, they decided to return to the Pasice Gorge. That was also a unique situation, because in partisan hospital was a rule that didn't allow to use again the location which was one discovered by other people. After 2 months, the wounded returned back to the gorge, where some new cabins were built. The second attack occurred in March 1944 during the last German offensive. And nobody, at that time, nobody could leave the hospital because the German soldiers had reached the entrance. The wounded were hidden in the shelters. The guards took their positions in the bunkers, and when the enemy had come very close, they started to shoot. The enemy soldiers ran away, but shooting didn't stop for hours. Next day, they had burned the farm in the vicinity, which was the main meeting point for the hospital. This was the farm of Janez Peternel, that I mentioned it before. Now, I would like to show you a part of a documentary film which was made in 1947. It is interesting because in this video you will see the most authentic images of Franja, so from 1947. And you will see also the actors, people who act in the video are actually people who were in the hospital during the war, including Dr. Franja. And you will see now how they organized evacuation when the guard had communicated them that the enemy is in the vicinity.
V bolnici Franja ranjence niso ščitili le s konspiracijo, temveč so računali tudi z obrambo. Če se je sovražnik nevarno približal bolnici, so ranjence evakuirali v skrite bunkerje.
Okay. The hospital, as we know today, was organized as a central ward which was intended for severely wounded soldiers. For less wounded, dislocated wards were organized, and one of them was led by an Italian doctor, Antonio Ciccarelli. From December 1943 until May 1945, 578 wounded persons were treated in the main ward in the hospital Franja, and another 300 in dislocated units. So about 900 wounded were treated in the Franja Partisan Hospital. They offered help to members of resistance movements of different nationalities, members of Allied forces, and even to an enemy soldier. It was an ex-German soldier who was taken to the hospital because of his illness, but later, after his recovering, he was not allowed to leave the hospital, and because he was a shoemaker, he did his profession in the hospital till the end of the war. So I think it was a question of trust. The staff worked in cooperation with the local people. So the support of local people was very important, because without it, operation of the hospital which would not be possible. 78 people died in the hospital, and this is not a high number, consider that severely wounded were treated there, and also women had an important role. They represented 20% of the staff, and they worked equal as their men colleagues. The hospital was built gradually, and at the end of the war, it consisted of 14 wooden barracks and some auxiliary facilities, as you can see on this map. Besides cabins for wounded and staff, there were an invalid care facility, X-ray unit. X-ray was very rare. Only 2 partisan hospitals had it. Then, of course, kitchen, storage and workshop, laundry and washroom, and even an electric plant. I prepared 3 maps from different periods. So at the beginning, in December 43, only 1 barrack was built. Then the second one was built in February 44. This was for surgeries, but at the same time this was the room for Dr. Franja. So he worked and lived in the same room. This is the situation from June 1944. We see some new cabins, and then at the end of the war, May 1945, the last cabin, the new kitchen, was finished only a few days before they left the hospital. So constantly they built something, improved something, as if the war would last. Well, soon after the war, in May 1946, the hospital was opened for the visitors as a monument, and in 70 years it was not easy to maintain the monument because different natural disasters happened. The biggest one in 2007. That year, because of the flood, the hospital was almost completely destroyed. Only 1 barrack remained on its position. Like during the war, this place united people again, because the reconstruction project connected politics, experts, and individuals. People from Slovenia, Italy, and Austria who participated in the reconstruction with money and objects. And based on previously prepared drawings and documents, the cabins and auxiliary facilities were reconstructed. Copies of objects were made and substitute objects were acquired. So the Franja, as you will see if you will go there on Wednesday, is a reconstructed monument. And now, again, some history. Despite extreme situation, medical care was on high professional level. Surgeries were performed by qualified doctors and mostly under adequate anesthesia. Dr. Dragantz was a surgeon, the head of the so-called flying surgical team. That means that they performed surgeries in different places, even in the farms, if that was necessary. Medicines and medical supplies had been collected by locals and later were sent by allies. 2 courses for medical staff were organized in the hospital because only 1 nurse had a medical school. She worked as an assistant during the surgeries and cared about medical documentation of the patients. You have an example there. As the war lasted and lasted, the region was not able to collect enough food and medical supplies for the hospital anymore, so a special service was organized, and for a while food was supplied from Vipava Valley, which is about 60 kilometers away from Franja. And of course, they couldn't use the main roads. Later, food was provided from Gorenska region. There was never lack of food in the hospital because people of Primorska region care about wounded. For the holidays, they often send them packages with cakes, dry fruits, and other goodies. Primorska region had different position among Slovenian regions at that time because after the First World War, it was occupied by Italy, and people in our region suffered a lot because of Mussolini and his fascist regime. They were not allowed to use their own language, etc. And after the Italian capitulation in 1943, a lot of people from our region joined the partisan army, or they supported partisans because they wanted freedom. Severely wounded had to stay in the hospital for months, and that was not easy, not only because of their injuries and pains, but also because of the place, which was very cold and moist. On the other hand, we can imagine that they felt like in the trap while were listening the shooting from the distance. Because of that, the staff tried to organize different activities and cultural events with singing and short plays for their patients. Revolutionary songs were always on the program because they gave them courage and hope that the war would end and the freedom would come. Listen, a short part. Back, please. Samo. So listen a short part of the song which is performed by a partisan choir, a revolutionary song about freedom. They also issued a wall, at first a wall newspaper, and later a so-called patient's bulletin with memories of people who worked in the hospital and also of memories of wounded. People, as I said before, people of different nationalities, social and cultural backgrounds, civilians and soldiers had stood together and fought against the enemy for freedom. They gave us an important message about values such as humanity, solidarity, integration. Why should we spread these messages and values among people? Because those are values that give us the right direction when we are in doubt. What should we do? Franja Partisan Hospital is an outstanding example of mutual integration where people of different nations, religions, cultural and language backgrounds from all over Europe were involved. And the idea of post-war common Europe is also based on the heritage of that fight. In this map you can see from which countries were people involved in Franja, so Italy, Croatia, France, Polish, Russia, and other ex-Soviet republics. One of the wounded was also from United States. It was an American. He was an American pilot. Last year, Franja received European Heritage Label. What is this? Maybe we can see the video first. The European Heritage Label brings together outstanding heritage sites with a symbolic European value. All the labeled sites have played a significant role in the history and culture of Europe in European integration. So being awarded with the European Heritage Label is a confirmation of its role, I mean Franja, in the past, and also of its symbolic value for people in Europe today. Can we see the video? No? There are 29 sites in Europe for now. Franja Partisan Hospital is the only one from Slovenia for now. So the sites which have shaped Europe's history. And here you have names of the sites from your countries. If you didn't know, Krapina Neanderthal site from Croatia, Archaeological Park Carnuntum, Austria, the Imperial Palace from Vienna, Austria, and Museo Casa Alcide de Gasperi, Italy. As a European Heritage Label site, we are preparing different programs for our visitors, especially for youngsters, to spread the messages and values of Franja Partisan Hospital. We organized different guided tours, lectures, and this year, for the first time, we also organized an exhibition in the Franja Partisan Hospital. It's an exhibition of children drawings, and they're entitled Children Help the Children. And we also cooperate with the Marathon Franja. We are proud that the biggest cycling marathon in Slovenia is named after Franja Partisan Hospital. This was a great idea 35 years ago. And I hope that each participant on the marathon knows the story of Franja Partisan Hospital. Unfortunately, only a few witnesses from Franja is still alive, but you can visit the site, you can read about it, just don't forget it. Solidarity, companionship, intercultural dialogue, perseverance, and fairness represent 5 aspects of shared cultural and sport values that are part of history of Franja Partisan Hospital and Marathon Franja. I believe that you will talk a lot about these values in future days, and that all this will help you in your work and your personal life. So, Franja connects people in different ways. I saw this many times in the past, I believe that Franja Academy is another opportunity for us, for you, to meet people, to share best practices, ideas, values, messages. I wish you a good work and successful academy. Thank you for your attention.